Good evening and welcome to the March 6, 2024 City Council Finance Authority and Housing Authority meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, and I ask our City Clerk, Carmen Avalos, to call the roll.
Thank you. We'll start off with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Here.
Councilmember Albert.
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Here.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Here.
And Mayor Haldeshell.
All right, a special treat this evening with Aaron Salas and Timmy Harry from Roseville High leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, please stand. O's.
I pledge allegiance to
The
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now that's a first.
Hear about that one.
That was.
I don't know what to say on that.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
I'm gonna
That was
have
my
to.
suggestion.
I'm gonna have to back and look at the videotape because.
Going to go down in history on that one.
All right.
It's going to YouTube.
Center High School, do you want to actually do better than they did? Okay, all right. All right, we'll ask our city clerk to announce the meeting procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, everyone. Our agendas are available at the end of the staff table to your right or online on the city's website. All comments from the public should be directed to our city council and not to any staff member or the public. All speakers must speak from the podium as this meeting is being recorded. For comments on non-agendized items, members of the public may address the city council regarding any item that is not listed on tonight's agenda. Public comments on non-agenda items will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The collective initial period for public comment is limited to 25 minutes. Any speaker that did not have an opportunity to speak during this segment due to time limitations will be able to speak at the end of the meeting just prior to council comments. The Brown Act does prohibit our city council from taking action, debating, or discussing items that are not listed on tonight's agenda. For comments on the agenda, to make comments on the items that are listed on the agenda, each speaker will be provided with 5 minutes, and they can express their comments to the city council. Time will be monitored during this time, and the red light will blink at the podium once your time is ready to conclude. Lastly, if you're addressing the city council tonight, we ask you to please consider stating your name for the record. With that, we welcome your civic participation. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the city of Roseville.
Right, and we have 2 points in the evening in which we take public comment on non-agenda items, and am I correct, that's limited to 3 minutes to express those comments?
For
Non-agenda items, okay. We have a couple of cards. Dave would like to speak. Dave, are you here?
We'd like to come up together if that's
Okay, I have Dave, Sandy, and Debbie. Okay, sure.
so we're going to kind of speak in tandem, if that's
Okay.
okay? Yeah.
You're going to speak in, I'm sorry, you're going to speak in, I'm still
Tandem.
trying to
It's okay,
process
I
the
know.
pledge here.
In tandem,
Oh,
so
in tandem, okay. Is it Constitution Week again?
it's every day.
All right, thank you
Good
very much.
evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. We're so happy to be here and to be able to utilize this process that's here for us to be able to work with you. We thank you so much for being public servants, for taking your oaths of office to uphold and defend our constitutions. So thank you for that. We are coming to you this evening in peace as we the people to give you notice and instruction so that you and your agents may provide due care. This national lockdown notice has already been given to 50 state governors, to the President of the United States, to the Supreme Court, to the United States Senate, and the United States Congress. We are now giving you a copy. In January, we learned that the federal government, in alignment with the World Health Organization, has announced an amendment to a credible threat of public health emergency. Their expanding countermeasures now include both Ebola and Marburg viruses. And they also include the extension of liability immunity to manufacturers, distributors, program planners, qualified persons, and their officials, agents, and employees. We have included this report in our notice envelope just given to you. We have also learned that the government was never granted any authority to lock down the people even in times of emergency. The main object of government is the protection and preservation of personal rights, private property, and public liberties. The government just serves for our benefit as public officers, trustees, and servants of the people. We are also attaching a list of unalienable rights, which includes the right to accept or refuse any medical treatment for any reason. Since this council has a history of putting the city under health emergency orders for extended periods of time, we are very concerned that another round of involuntary lockdowns and health orders could occur in Arthur County. My colleague will continue.
Hi, I'm Debbie Woolley with We the People. Please take notice that all states in our Republican form of government have sworn to protect individual liberty as a condition to be hired as trustees. The people of America are all guaranteed to have the same rights in all the states. As an elected official, do you believe it's your duty to always protect the natural rights of the people so they are guaranteed enjoyment of their natural rights? Or do you believe that in some time of panic or emergency that you can remove the people's rights to freely exercise liberty, movement, worship, commerce, or any other purpose that is lawful? If so, please show your constitutional authority where you get that power, posting this granted authority conspicuously within the next 15 days, notifying the public and all agents. If you cannot show where you got the authority and you take any action blocking the people's rights to enjoy freedom, then any lockdown, mandate, or forced use of medical device will be construed as being done with malice, intent, full knowledge, and understanding against your trust indenture, your contract with the people. That would be the Constitution. This notice is given in peace and with the love of Christ, that you and your agents may provide due care to those who have all political power. We the people. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Dave Capizano, and I would like to thank the mayor and the vice mayor and the city council for your hard work and dedication to the city of Roseville.
My name is Wendy Farshman. I'm a resident of Placer County. However, I have children who are residents of Roseville. As a extended family, we were harmed by the lockdowns. Our constitutional right, freedom of religion, was kind of stomped on. Our freedom of association was stomped on. One of my daughters was coerced into having the COVID-19 vaccination. And I just pray that we never try to do this again, where our government tries to take the place of God in our lives. These freedoms are God-given. And I really appreciate all of you for trying to do your best to uphold those freedoms and rights of we the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll request the clerk announce the procedures for approving the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All matters on consent are considered routine in nature and will be approved by one motion of the City Council. There will be no discussion on consent calendar items unless a member of the public, staff, or City Council requests that such item be removed for further discussion. At this time, no request has been made by City Council or staff. Is there any member of the public that would like to pull an item for further discussion tonight? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, we have, for council's consideration tonight, we have consent calendar items 6.1 through 6.9. If I may please have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start a roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Councilmember Albert.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haldashelt.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next we'll go to ordinances. Item 7.1, Roseville Municipal Code regarding camping on private property. With us is Police Captain Doug Blake and Deputy City Attorney Travis Cochran. We're ready when you are.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Doug Blake, Captain of the Roseville Police Department, accompanied by Travis Cochran, Deputy City Attorney. We're here to talk about and inform council on the property camping ordinance. Go ahead, there we go. The police and code enforcement, we got together and collaborated with the city attorney. We've noticed an uptick in the number of issues associated with camping on private property. One of the main contributors is the creation of encampments on the private property with multiple individuals or groups of people camping permanently for longer periods of time. Now, this occurs both with and without the property owner's consent. Encampments and unauthorized camping have several negative consequences that we'd like to bring to light to the council today. One of the first things is lack of sanitary conditions. Usually that can also be accompanied by lack of proper water, both supply and waste, and also waste disposal. Camping on private property can at times excessively attract illicit behavior, such as the use of controlled substances. It can also engender some property crimes amounting to vandalism, trespassing, theft in the neighborhood, surrounding areas, and burglary, and also involve littering and illegal dumping. Overcrowding can at times occur, usually in the street, parking, and other noise issues accompany this issue as well. These two pictures depict one of the examples. Now, it's hard to tell because it just looks fairly simple. One of the next slides is going to zoom in on it, but behind the fence in this residence is a tent, as you can see it. If you go to the next slide, what you see is a better illustration of some of the things that can accompany long-term camping. If you can see the extension cord and some of the use, which would be a dangerous use of electricity, especially for longer periods of time, these are some of the things that we've noticed that can be a public health hazard and a safety issue for not only the home, the residents in the home, the campers, but the people in the surrounding neighborhoods. This is an illustration of one of the things we highlighted earlier, which was the overcrowding on the streets, some of the excessive parking issues, things that start maybe in the driveway but spill out into the residential areas, and in some cases where parking is occurring, either blocking driveways of neighboring residences and other streets. There's the picture where the parking has extended considerably out into the street, obstructing the flow of traffic. And what you see behind is an illustration of some camping or some long-term camping occurring in the driveway.
This particular situation was an individual who was allowed to camp in the driveway, but also operated basically an auto mechanic and like resale shop. And so not only was he camping there, he was also storing his vehicles in the surrounding area. You could see several of them creating overcrowding and other impacts on that neighborhood.
What you have here is a private property, yet it remains undeveloped. So there are a number of cases where private property owners have property, they do not occupy the land, it remains undeveloped, and yet folks might come either with their permission or without their permission and camp. And the campings, as they extend into long periods of time, create some public health issues, namely a lot of the waste, a lot of the human waste, potential drug use, and a number of other issues that can accompany those problems. There's another example. When we encounter some of these camps that exist on private property, these are camps that have existed for quite some duration. And we then are obligated to work with the private property owners to begin to absolve some of the public health safety issues. Currently, the Roseville Municipal Code Section 10.56.020, it allows camping on private property if, number one, you're camping on your own land. Number two, you're camping with the owner of the land who is present with you. And number three, if you're camping with written permission of the landowner. However, there are no other restrictions or regulations attending that municipal code, the existing municipal code, and there are no durational limitations or extensions or limitations to that period of time. There is no period of time given. So the proposal, the information we're offering tonight amends the definition of camping to specifically include occupation of tents, huts, vehicles, and other temporary shelters. It creates durational limits on camping activity, no more than 72 hours each instance and no more than 3 times per calendar year. And campers must maintain sanitary conditions throughout the duration with proper water and waste disposal. Authorizing camping is, unauthorized camping is still prohibited. In other words, if the private property owner does not consent to the camping, that is still unauthorized, it's still illegal and prohibited. The camper must have written permission from the private property owner. So the recommended action tonight is to introduce for the first reading an ordinance amending sections 10.56.005 and 10.56.020 of the Roseville Municipal Code. And at this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Captain Blake. Any questions?
I have a question.
Councilman Alvord?
Could you describe what is proper water and proper disposal and what would not be proper as an example?
Sure. The intent of that section, if you read into it, it refers back to basically local and state regulations. And the local regulations that we really wanted to capture are contained in Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code regarding use of our public sewer system and discharge into the sewer system. So in those provisions, basically, you can't take, human waste, animal waste, and dump it into the stormwater system. You can't take gray water, so assume you're taking a shower or a bath in your backyard. You can't take that gray water, even though it's not waste, it is still considered gray water. You can't go dump that into the storm drain. You can't illegally dump your RV into the sewer system unless you have a proper connection. So it's those types of activities. I could spell them out a little bit more if you'd like me to read through, but that's the general idea. And again, those things are already regulated under Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code. And the intent, as opposed to trying to encapsulate everything in the camping ordinance, is to refer to the other areas that we have, and so that they work symbiotically together.
I have some more questions, but I'll hold them if that's all right.
Why don't you go ahead? Go
Krista,
ahead.
do you have a clarification when you want to?
That was my question, but as you describe it, is there a scenario where a camper does have a tent camper, is there any scenario where they would have proper disposal of wastewater? It sounds like maybe somebody like in a motorhome, but I don't think there's any scenario where a tent camper would have proper disposal.
Yeah, it's complicated, but I guess the other thing is one of the reasons we are highlighting the need for short-term camping is sometimes you don't have those additional activities associated with long-term camping. So with long-term camping, if you're camping for a week, you probably want to take a shower. If you're camping for 2 or 3 days in the backyard, like an overnight camping trip with the kids or with the Girl Scouts or something like that, typically that's not as necessary, and so you don't run into those issues. However, if you did, if there is a way to collect that gray water and make sure that it's discharged into the tub in the house or into a drain in the house, or if it's runoff that goes into the backyard in the proper sewer system, that could be a possibility. It's really making sure that we're not doing incorrect sort of waste or discharge into the incorrect system.
I think the implication of the time frame shows that some provisions can be made in the short term, but they can't necessarily be made in the long term, both for wastewater and for human waste.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Albert, if you any?
Well, so you mentioned it, like if it's the Scouts or your grandchildren are in the backyard and they're camping for, the day, the night. Because usually they'll go in the house, or if you have a camper and they've got all the facilities on it, and that'll still, you're using that bathroom and you're using the facilities in there. So that would be an okay thing for 3 days or a small period of time, not to live in the backyard.
Absolutely.
That is certainly the aim of this ordinance. And one of the other things Travis has reminded me a number of times, and we discussed while working with code enforcement, is that this is a complaint-driven process. Mm-hmm. We're not proactively going out there looking for Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts camping in their backyard. We're looking for those long-term public health hazard-related issues. And based on a complaint, enforcement isn't the very first step. It's usually working with the property owner, working through abatement procedures, and then enforcement is much further down the line in the process.
Thank you for explaining that. That's really good. That it's, if you get a call from somebody, a neighbor or something that sees something and wants you to check it out. Thank you.
Councilmember Mendoza?
I don't like making assumptions, but I'm going to make one here since this is complaint-driven. I'm assuming that in instances, in undeveloped, I'm talking about undeveloped property here, and so non-residential, but it was called out in the slide, so I wanted to bring it up. Instances where building is being done, and you have a fifth wheel towed in there for security on site. I can think of 3 Christmas tree lots within Roseville where those RVs go up a week or two before Thanksgiving, and they're there through Christmas or a day or two before until they sell out. And I know we're not going to seek them out, but I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, in instances where it is their property, 2 of those lots, I know that's their own property, and they bring those trees in from Oregon and sell them on those lots. It still would exceed the 72 or 7, whatever the 3-day time range is. And obviously, even if you tied those back to back to back, it would exceed the 3-time threshold. We're even if somebody said something about that, I mean, we'd be able to work with them on that, right? I'm more concerned about the people providing security in some of the development areas, that utilize RVs and fifth wheel trailers that are dropped off.
Absolutely. I think construction theft is something we deal with all the time, and I love Christmas trees. I would never want to prohibit people from. No, I think the insinuation is that we would be absolutely reasonable about this. Code enforcement has assured us of that. These are exceptional situations. And if you when you read the city code, you read that there's enough discretionary room in there that we're just not going to look blindly in a black and white way and just cite someone at the outset.
Cool.
And can I add to that? So for the Christmas tree lot, they need to get a permit through planning, and as part of that permit approval, they allow them to live on site. Same thing if you're remodeling your kitchen and you want to live in your trailer on site while your house is under remodel, there's a permit process for that through planning.
Thank you.
Councilman Albert?
So my worry about this, I'm very supportive, and I know the challenges we've had, and we need to deal with those. And it'll be nice to have some ordinances that give you power to deal with those troublesome areas that the neighbors are screaming about, and it's kind of hard to do it because according to our rules, they can. But what really worries me is and I don't have property big enough, but if I had property big enough as a property owner, and say my mom wants to come live with us, and she has an RV, and I've got plenty of room in my back or the side of my house or whatever, it's not bothering my neighbors, then she can live in the RV. Come in, spend time with the family, but sleeps out there, occasionally maybe goes and takes her RV and dumps waste and comes back. To me, that seems like that's my right as a property owner to be able to allow that. Or if I have a child that is kind of semi on their own, and they're, again, in an RV or something living on my property, it's my right, it's my property. I don't want to take that away. And of course, if they're being a nuisance and have a problem, hopefully we've got ordinances that can deal with that. But I don't want to have some neighbor just complain because there's an RV in the backyard that really isn't causing a problem, yet our ordinance now says 72 hours, and I don't want to take away the rights of a property owner. So how can we protect a legit use?
So I think there's a number of different facets to that question because it is an important issue, and it's something that we evaluated a lot, particularly the idea of linking long-term camping to something like an administrative permit. Because that's probably what it would best fit under, but even if that's the best fit, it's not a great fit. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. One, our administrative permit cost is over $1,500. And so it's hard to draw a black and white line because if you have a person who's wanting to camp long-term for a year or more, $1,500 may not be a big deal. But if you have a Boy Scouts organization or something like that that wants to camp for 4 days, coming up with $1,500 for an administrative permit process is certainly more of a burden. And then a few of the other downfalls with respect to the administrative permit process is you have to provide notice to all the properties within 300 feet of wherever the activity is going to be. And then anybody receiving the notice has the right to request a hearing before the planning commission. And then anybody can appeal the planning commission decision to the city council. And so before any of that would be completed, probably whoever wanted to do the camping would have been long, done or something like that. And so it didn't really fit neatly within that. We also contemplated creating a separate permit process. But what we internally sort of evaluated and looked at is we haven't had enough of these issues come to light yet to really make sense to create an entirely new process with a fee and everything else. And we really wanted to make it so camping at this point is still free, and we don't want to associate a cost with it. And that goes back to what Captain Blake was explaining, which is, these are sort of case-by-case situations, and it's complaint-based. And so if we get a complaint with something if somebody is camping there and there is not an issue, we're not going to go actively look that person out. We're not going to enforce against them. And if somebody does complain, like a neighbor, and we go out there and we inspect and be like, look, this is a really reasonable use, one of the things that we're going to actively do is try to mediate that situation. What can be done? Is there a better place to park it? Are you right up next to their master bedroom window, but on the other side of the fence? Are there things that we can do to make this an agreeable situation, short of having to cite or something like that? So I think we would work creatively with those property owners to try to figure something out. But at the end of the day, trying to create a permit process or fit this into the admin permit process, it just wasn't feasible for what we were trying to do.
In the wording here, though, we don't have the reasonable fit phrases. We have 72 hours, no more than 3 times per year. And if my neighbor doesn't like me and wants to complain about it, where do you have the wiggle room the way it's actually written? Why can't the neighbor say, look, you said this, and now you're not even enforcing it?
Yeah, we have prosecutorial discretion, and we have the ability to interpret the rules in the way that we think that they should be interpreted. It's harder to write something with sort of that looseness or that reasonableness in there, because then you have something that's overly vague and harder to enforce, whereas it's better to utilize sort of our discretion and our ability to interpret and work with people as opposed to try to craft the law around that.
And more of the discretion's built into the mechanism whereby we go out on a complaint and start working with it. Let's say it is a great use, just like you described, but maybe the generator's causing some noise issues. Maybe there are some other things that we can then work with the property owner to mitigate whatever that is, whether it's noise and the correct application of power or what have you, and then manage it that way. We're oriented in that already in the process of answering those complaints. Confirm that with city code enforcement. I know that's the way we've dealt it and approached those situations when we've gotten calls. In my experience, I have very, very rarely, and I am straining to think of one case where I've had to respond out to a situation that you described. The vast majority is frequently issues where the camping has extended for a considerable period of time, and there is nothing on the books that we have to appeal to address other than the blight issues, and then it is engaged in a considerably long process in working with the property owner, who may at times, and in my experience, sometimes feel like it's gotten out of hand and they have no recourse. So this now provides a foundation for us to work with the property owners to start resolving some exacerbated issues.
Okay, so and I hate wording it this way, as long as you can guarantee that we're not going to hamper property owner rights for legitimate uses like we've talked about here, then
The best prediction.
That is not the intent of this ordinance.
And the best prediction of future is our past behavior. And our past behavior, in every case, we go out, we work with the property owner, we try to mitigate, and then we warn, and then we work through this process until citation ever gets to be a consideration on the table.
All right, thank you.
Captain Blake and Mr. Cochran, what are the parking restrictions with respect to our recreational vehicles, boats, and other things?
Currently, for long-term, I believe it's no more than 72 hours on the street in the public right-of-way.
And there's a requirement it has to be attached to the vehicle, so it can't just be detached and left for a long period of time unattached to a vehicle, as though it were used in that fashion for storage.
Right, yeah, because I've had constituents who have come and said, this is not the way I want the street to look, right? And you have to move it every 72 hours, right?
Yes.
Right, so whether it's inhabited or not, right, it has to move every 72 hours, right?
Yeah, correct, if it's in the public right-of-way.
Or what about the driveway?
It does not apply to the driveway.
No.
Not a driveway.
Okay. Does it, if it impedes the sidewalk?
There are other restrictions, like you said, like an access issue, an RV or, a trailer hitch sticking out is not supposed to impede the sidewalk, and there's other provisions that would govern that would allow us to enforce. And there's other requirements about dilapidated vehicles or rundown vehicles in driveways, so there's some nuances, but generally speaking, you can park a vehicle in the driveway as long as it is within the driveway, not causing other hazards or public health and safety issues.
Okay. So private property includes retail, commercial, residential, immasalale, churches. I was trying to use a fancy word for churches, right? But that's private property.
Yes, private property, yes. Anything that's not public property is essentially
The
private property.
right-of-ways in which are goat herds, because Councilman Mendoza's question triggered one, those are also permitted when we have the goats out and the goat herder or the sheep herder is.
Yes. And typically,
that's already
those sorts of
permitted,
uses,
right?
there is an agreement beforehand or something built into that use that allows the living on the property. That's usually contemplated at the outset.
Okay. It struck me in the photos you showed that there was one consistent thing other than is that it is not a structure that's been permitted and approved by the city. Not an accessory dwelling unit, not an addition, not a structure, because there are code requirements for a structure, right? So we're really talking about a structure that has not been permitted by the city.
That's correct. I guess you could have a situation where somebody would be living in a shed that was permitted or is allowed to be there, that could be considered camping, but there are certainly distinctions between something like a single-family dwelling unit or a residence or other permitted structure. But outside of that kind of like random situation of, again, like a shed or a storage shed or something like that that had been approved and somebody was camping in that, because that could be considered camping, it wouldn't apply. So like there wouldn't be no conflict with the short-term rental or like the ADU ordinances or anything like that.
Let's go back to that short-term rental. So the house gets rented out, the RV comes, it's in the parking lot, or the driveway. You said as long as it's on private property.
There's also other conditions in the short-term rental ordinance that doesn't allow camping at short-term rentals. So that's sort of another caveat. But generally speaking, that's not a permitted use for a short-term rental property.
Okay. I think those are all the questions I have for now. We'll open it up for public comment.
Me again. Yeah, just really interesting, especially with what's going on in society and people having to be unsheltered. I was just kind of curious about the car. I think that was listed in the verbiage there, that a car would be acceptable. Is that right? Camping in a vehicle?
Camping in a vehicle on private property would not be allowed under the ordinance.
Okay, so I didn't see a car up listed on that list of things, right? When you put the slide up? Because you listed,
It says vehicles.
So a vehicle would be really comprehensive and include automobile.
Yes, so there is the ordinance itself includes vehicles specifically. It may not have made it up onto the slide deck, but the ordinance is more specific and prohibits camping in a vehicle on private property.
It's on,
okay.
it's on slide deck, number 11.
the other thing I wanted to say is that
My copy.
Councilmember Alvord brought up that concern about the property owner concerns, and I really appreciate that. I was also concerned about the verbiage not being included, of having some lenience or negotiating kind of situation. It's, if people aren't aware that that is allowed, they may feel like they can't negotiate with you. So if they just pull up the verbiage to educate themselves, they may not see that, hey, there's an opportunity to try and work these things through. So I had similar concerns to Councilmember Alvord about that. And then you also mentioned that every 72 hours, whatever structure that's being allowed to be camped in needs to be moved. So my question is for how long? Because if it is a vehicle of some sort, then do they just drive around the block and then they come back, and that's, someone trying to get around that, you got to move it in 72 hours. So I don't know if you want to define for at least how long it needs to be away from that area. And then also just kind of wondering the difference between the long-term camping and squatting, what squatting is. So yeah, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
So the 72-hour vehicle issues is regulated through state law on the vehicle code for parking in the street. And no, people are not allowed to just drive around the block and replace and just do it that way in King's X. Maybe you've seen in some other locations, I saw one place that actually paints the street and paints the tires and shows. It's like, wow, that's pretty dedicated. We certainly don't go that far, but we follow state law and not allow just someone to drive around the block and replace their vehicle and keep it there for storage. Squatting, the difference between squatting and camping is when people make it into the established structure against the permission of the property owner. And then the property owner has very little recourse after some period of time to actually get them removed. That's a very complicated issue, and that's dealt with in a completely different set of laws and regulations and enforcement mechanisms. So, good question.
Anyone, any other public comment? Approach?
Hi, I'm Debbie again. Thank you for hearing me. I have a couple of questions. I haven't had time to form them very well, so please forgive me. It has to do with my questions. What's the difference between public and private? Do we have, it's my observation of being in the state of California, that in 2008 we had the mortgage crisis, we had all the short sales, and then we had a lot of people that were unable to house themselves. It seemed like the legislature passed legislation and statutes dealing, and they started saying it's legal to camp on public property. That's my perception as one of the people. So my question is, what's the difference between public and private ordinances on camping? Does the state of California say it's okay to camp on public property, and now our ordinance is going to say it's not okay to camp on private property? I would need clarity to know that, but my conclusion is if you go in the direction of we need an ordinance for private property, but we're okay with people camping in the public, what authority do we have to regulate private property when it's part of the Bill of Rights, that our private property is to be protected by our trusted servants? So those are my questions, is what is the ordinances on public property as far as camping, and private property that you're doing ordinances and permits for? Thank you.
I'm going to ask our city attorney if you want to answer that question, because I think it's broader than what's before us tonight. And there's a lot of court cases with respect to camping on public property, right?
So the difference between public property and private property is owned by a governmental entity. So in this case, it would be property owned by the city of Roseville, Placer County, state of California, the federal government. And then private property would be property owned by anybody else, a private individual, private company, nonprofit, business. This ordinance only applies to private property, not public property. The reason why this ordinance does not apply to public property is there's a series of court decisions by the Ninth Circuit that are currently pending for review in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, that essentially allows for cities, they're unable to enforce their camping on public property ordinances, which we do have, if we don't have enough shelter beds for all the unhoused in our jurisdiction. So that is, so that's why we cannot prohibit, or we do have it on the books, but we can't enforce the public
camping prohibition, since Roseville does not have enough shelter beds for all of our homeless. There was a third question in there. What was the third?
I think that was, it was public-private, right? That's what I heard. Anyone else? Any other public comment? All right, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the council, see if there are any additional questions.
I'm good.
Yeah, I have one, and so we've heard, and I think this is important, private property rights. But private property rights, what is the extent of private property rights? In other words, if I start taking down my good neighbor fence, am I within my private property rights, taking that down?
So that's an extremely broad question. Your property rights are established by, the state constitution, by court opinions, by state statute, by local ordinance and regulation.
Right.
Generally speaking, the city has the ability through its police powers to regulate activities throughout the city, whether it be on public and or private property. Now, there's always exceptions to that, like the Fourth Amendment. So we can't enter somebody's private residence to search and seize things. That's, an established, I'll call it a property right or a personal right of a person not to be seized or searched without, would it be probable cause, reasonable suspicion, one of those. I'll leave it up to Captain Blake, who knows that better than me. But I think it's a good example of what is a right that we can infringe upon. But short of that, in another context, we have the ability to regulate what occurs on private property. We do it with our businesses. We do it with signage requirements. We do it with connections to our sewer systems, our water usage. We do it with a lot of different aspects of day-to-day life, but not like everything. And so I can't sit here and tell you every single property right, but.
Let me see if I can refine it. So I have the right to private property rights, so long as it does not infringe upon private property rights of another. Is that correct?
Yes.
Health and safety, right?
Yes, and that's really getting to the nature of this ordinance, which is it's not to prohibit camping. It's not that we don't want people to camp. It is to make sure that camping is done in a safe way that preserves the quality of life that we have here in Roseville, that preserves the aesthetic value of our neighborhoods, the quiet enjoyment of other people's homes, because that's one of the other property rights that we have to consider also, is people have quiet enjoyment of their property. And if your neighbor is allowing people to camp on their property who are being loud, who are disposing of waste, who are causing other, issues, that's something that we need to address as well.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions? All right, if not, comments? If not, I'll ask the clerk to read the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On item 7.1, the City Council will consider introducing for a first reading an ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville, amending sections 10.56.005 and 10.56.020 of Title 10 of the Roseville Municipal Code regarding camping. At this time, may I please have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Councilmember Elvord. Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haldashelt.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for your presentation. Now we've reached the part of the agenda that will have another period of public comment on non-agenda items. There's extra credit for those at Center High School if they want to comment.
And Roseville High School.
And Roseville High School. All right. Seeing and hearing none, I'll ask the city manager if he has anything.
No further reports, Mayor. Thank you.
City attorney, anything?
I have no further reports. Thank you.
Councilwoman Rakucci, you want to start us off with any committee activities you've had?
Let's do it.
You closed it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I already closed it. But we'll do it off to the side afterwards, so. Hold on, I need a ruling. I'm not the attorney. May I?
Open it back up. Okay.
I will open it back up for public comment. You stood up, come on. You come on.
Hi, I'm Gerard Tyler Carino of Center High School, and honestly, I'm afraid of talking in front of a lot of people like this, but a lot of people in this room right now are really counting on this meeting to like graduate high school. So we're just asking if we could like somehow get some public comments until like 7 p.m. We really, really need this. I know it's a little bit silly. This is a serious meeting. I understand that. And there's a lot of people who want to talk about important things.
Let me assure you that after the meeting adjourns, we're going to take so much time signing and selfies, right, that you will meet your requirement.
We round up, so you're
All right,
fine.
we do, we absolutely.
Oh my God. Thank you guys. Thank you. Gerard Tyler Carino. Thanks all of you. God bless you.
I understand the importance of that.
I love you guys. I love everyone here.
For the courage.
Thanks for your honesty.
Thanks for your courage, because all of them in the back were thinking the same thing, and Roseville High School is just going to hang out until 7 o'clock anyway. All right. City Attorney, anything else? All right. Oh, yeah, no, I was like, Councilwoman Rukuchi, you were going to start us off with committee activity.
Yeah, we have committee and different things that are going on. We've all had a lot of different things. A couple of things I was going to mention. I had my Placer County Water Agency and City of Roseville meeting. We had that yesterday and talking about upcoming things. And one of them is about what they call River Arc, and it's on the Sacramento River. It's a futuristic kind of project of having an ability to have water in our region from a different source. But it was a good discussion, and it continues right now. We also had our strategic workshop with the city where we look at planning for the future and what are some of our needs for the future and what are some of our core values, and that's where it's health and safety in the community and fiscally sound in uncertain times, and a list of other things as well. And that was a good workshop that we just finished with all the council members and our city staff working together. And let me see. I'll mention we had Invest Health. It was a breakfast talking about the needs of some of the community, all the community here in Roseville and Placer County, and that was pretty worthwhile. Many of us here attended that. And that'll be good for now.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Thank you, Mayor. None of my council assignments met prior to this meeting. There will be some for the next meeting updates. I did want to provide just two things. One, I want to give a big thank you to our city staff. About a week or so ago, we had a large sinkhole on the east side of town, and the response to that was very quick. It was creating some traffic difficulties, and just want to give a shout out to those departments that jumped on that so quick and resolved that issue for the residents on that side of town. And wanted to thank so many of our city staff and management level individuals that gave up time on Saturday to provide so much information to residents that stopped by at the Galleria Mall for the job fair. I attended there, and I know some of the other council members stopped by as well. It was well attended, and I think that we have some good recruits that hopefully will follow through, and we can fill some important positions in the city. But I just wanted to thank our staff for doing such an amazing job and displaying why Roseville is so special to these potential applicants. So thank you.
Councilman Albert.
I wanted to add on a little bit to what Pauline was saying. In the Roseville Water Committee, the beauty of what happens in some of those meetings is we get reminded of how far Roseville looks ahead. And there's a comment, the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago. And Roseville and the second best time is now. And Roseville has been doing things for our water supply that's incredible. And many of these won't pan out for many years to come. But the River Arc is definitely one of them, where right now our primary water source is coming off of forget the river name.
The American River.
Middle Fork.
Middle Fork and the American River.
And this is coming out of the Sacramento River. And so it's another source. And then when you mix that with the site's reservoir project, which is again in the future where we're actually going to be storing water off the Sacramento River and then releasing it later to help with the flow, all these ultimately keep a lot of water in Folsom Lake for us because we need that water for salmon and drinking and other things. But it's nice to be able to use these other sources to supplement what we have. And then our aquifer storage and recovery, the city continues to build these wells where we can treat water, store it down below our city, and we can store 2 Folsom Lakes down below us, and then bring it back up, fresh treated water, and mix it with our other drinking water. But the whole purpose of these is to really make sure our water supply is secure. And then what came out of the meeting, what we were talking about, and the point I'm trying to get to is, you know, in the hot summer months, we all go on rationing water and doing that. That's a state requirement. That's not a Roseville requirement, because we actually have a very abundant supply, and we're very lucky living in this area here with our water supply. And so one of the things they're going to start doing is doing more marketing to try to let people we help out the state by rationing water, but it's not because of a lack of water supply for our area. We've been really looking ahead, planning for the future, and so our children and grandchildren will have adequate water supply. So sorry for the big lecture thing. I'm trying to delay it for the high school students. So.
Well, I thought I was gonna do that, and you got Vice Mayor between us, so. All right, Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
I don't have much to share tonight. I'm thinking that you might share a number of the meetings that we've had the last few weeks, our joint meetings.
They're all running together now.
Okay. The mayor and I participated with our city manager in a meeting with the county, at the county level, just a collaboration meeting to continue ongoing conversation. Same sort of meeting was had with the vice mayor and mayor of the city of Lincoln and Rockland, just a touch base and sharing different projects that we're working on. This morning was a government relations meeting, joint between the chambers, Auburn, Rockland, Lincoln, Roseville. 140 people were there. It was really a nice gathering. We heard from our Senator Roger Nilo about some things that are happening around the Capitol. I'm sure our mayor will mention this, but we were all in a 2-day workshop to review our goals and strategies. Very helpful. I look forward to the outcome, but that's really the roadmap that we all have as council members, is where we want to go in the next 4 years and what our priorities are. And I'll save the big news about what you're doing on Saturday.
Okay,
You share that.
I will share that I'll
right.
share.
That'll do it. And
I'll share.
And Councilmember Mendonça and
So
I.
for,
Oh.
I'm sorry?
No, you go ahead. No, just one last thing. We did have our law and regulation meeting too,
Yep.
a couple weeks ago, and just another update from our city staff, from our utilities and police department, about things that we're watching on that impact the way that Roseville operates. Just having a watchful eye there at the Capitol.
Yeah, for
Thank you.
our high school students, we're fortunate to have a very strong advocacy team on our water utilities, our electric utilities, our sewer utilities, our police, our police and public safety. And Councilmember Mendonça and Vice Mayor Bernasconi serve on that committee. And I've been asked by our Assembly member, Joe Patterson, to testify on Tuesday for a bill he has with respect to sexually violent predators and the housing of that, which has been something we've all been vigilant about, along with our county, because we have an individual that has, there's difficult to find a place to house them that doesn't create a safety issue with the city. We all serve on various boards and commissions. I serve on our Placer County Transportation Planning Commission, and also serve in the role as the vice chair of the Capitol Corridor Joint Powers Authority. So yesterday I got to go see what are called venture cars. They're built by Siemens, the vice mayor and I, along with Mr. Beans, Daniel Beans, our electric utility director, Melissa Aguiano, our economic development director, and one other of our staff, Mike Isom. When we went to Germany, one of the places we toured was the Siemens manufacturing facility there. They have one in South Sacramento. So these cars I saw yesterday are for the San Joaquin line. They're the newest and the nicest. And when we were going through the facility in Siemens in Germany, we saw the parts, we saw the robots, the chiseling, all the mechanics that go with that. We saw all the hoses and the HVAC system and everything that goes into a car. So it was nice to see them all painted and put together yesterday. So that was a big dedication Sacramento County Supervisor Patrick Hume is the chair of the San Joaquin Rail Authority. I got that name wrong, but that was good. And as several of my council members, and I want to thank them for a really, really good strategic planning session that we had for 2 days last week. Very constructive. We looked at our goals and priorities. Some of our goals we've achieved. Some of them we're enhancing. And we really had a very constructive conversation over those 2 days, and that will come before us probably in April or so, or it'll come before us, right? So, all right, I've got 4 minutes to talk about Saturday. So, childhood cancer strikes families, children, care providers, and for at least 25 years now. Keaton's Childhood Cancer Alliance has been holding an event. This Saturday, it'll be at Westville Galleria in the center court. It'll be my 6th year. I'll look like Captain Blake or Deputy City Manager Dion Louthan by the end of that. I don't have a long way to go, so but I will be shaving again for the 6th year in a row. I'm trying to get Councilmember Mendoza. So we raised money for this. So let's start the bidding at $1,000 for Councilmember Mendoza to shave his head. Okay. It's a very good charitable cause, and Roseville has a lot of good charities, whether it's our Roseville Police Activities League, our Friends of the Roseville Public Library, a lot of, I'm missing several of them, but this will, I'll be aerodynamic on Saturday and be wearing a knit hat because.
Faster on the trails.
I forgot that I'll probably look like Assistant City Manager Ryan DeVore as well, right? Who's rocking the bulb.
So what you're saying, Bruce, is that there's going to be hundreds of people in the center court shaving their head, open to the public, and anyone can
We have
come
women shaving their heads.
and watch it on Saturday.
Yeah, and
So-
watch it on
and
Saturday.
Our mayor will be one of
For
them.
helping children with cancer and
I think we have 2
education.
high school students from Roseville High School who just volunteered. I think that was
With
it.
lots of hair.
Yeah. So we have reached the appointed hour, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting till our March 20th meeting. We've met the 7 o'clock requirement for those from Center High School. Thank you very much.